Oh, okay.
There it goes. There.
Bill McCarthy, Bill 6 Churchill Drive. I just wanted that, since I came last time, I want to make sure that I followed up with you guys, see what was going to go on. I guess my only question at this point is your charge complete after you present this to the town council, or are you planning on continuing as an oversight committee perhaps for the, well, that's not what it was. For the municipal building committee, is it going to be disbanded after the town council is presented with this, or what's the future plan? So I'm just here, just keep an eye on you guys. All right.
We need it.
We appreciate it. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, Bill. Anybody else in person or online?
Nope.
Great. All right. Comments
just-
by council?
Yeah, just in response, Bill, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we were charged with reviewing the current ordinance, making any revisions that we thought were appropriate, and then presenting that to the council, which would have the final vote. And they may also see something that we didn't see, or may offer additional revisions or additions or corrections, which would mean we would come back as a committee. But I think, and Lauren, tell me if I'm correct, that once we have presented the final, what we consider the final product to the council, and the vote is taken, you know, yay or nay to approve our revisions, our charge is complete.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. This charge is specific to recommending revisions
Yeah.
to this specific ordinance. But then the ordinance process would follow out public hearing and public comment, and before it would be ratified, it's allowed to go on the paper and take 15 days. So that process, that's a council process.
And certainly, I mean, I'll just add, it might be beneficial to keep the committee around to revisit this again in the future. You know, we do something terribly wrong as the council, we want to fix it again. You know, then this committee could be reactivated or something like that. But that's our charge. That's our only capacity, is just to review the ordinance and go from there.
The council could decide to create an ordinance review subcommittee to review any ordinance.
Exactly.
Right, but your charge on this specific subcommittee is this specific ordinance.
Yes.
I would think it would be very difficult for the building committee, once this ordinance is passed and approved, to be on tenterhooks if we still exist to change something.
Sure.
Yeah.
Depending upon what happened in the committee, in the meetings themselves. It doesn't seem, it wouldn't be fair to that building committee that we should keep reviewing it. But you're right, if something major comes up, if it wants to be reopened or whatever,
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
And I think why these steps are in place, you know, we are not the final decision-making body, but bringing it to the council to see, and to have public commentary, to see if there's anything else, like I said, that we missed, that really becomes a sticking point, and then we go back, do further revisions, and then have the final vote.
As was said at the last meeting by one of us, I don't think I did, that we're charged to recommend, not to vote the
Exactly.
final thing. So
Absolutely.
it's
Correct.
recommendations we give for, as with most subcommittees.
Mhm. So I hope that answers your question.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Wonderful.
Keep coming and keep asking questions.
Please. We welcome you anytime.
I invited him last night when he was at the meeting last night.
Okay, all right.
I said, are you coming?
And thank you for coming. Great. Terrific.
There's a conservation commission at 7 tonight. If you, it's nice and cool in here, so.
Because I want to know why they're so concerned about well, this is the wrong venue for it. That, you know, this is already coming from, it's coming for the TPZ, and now they're worried about cutting down a couple of trees for putting in the bridge. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, they could hide behind this whole project just over a couple of trees. That's my take on it.
Well, and I will invite you to join us at 7 o'clock tonight. Councilor Boudrego and I are the liaisons. Yeah.
So as long as we get out of the pool.
Yeah.
A lot of meetings tonight.
Okay.
Well, terrific, absolutely. I'll move for the approval of the prior meeting minutes. Anybody see any issues with the minutes, Dave? Anything in particular?
No,
Okay, well then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
so moved.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
aye.
All opposed? Great. And now we'll move on to our charge. Why we're all here is to continue reviewing the ordinance for the Municipal Building Commission. I will turn it over to you, Lauren, to start moving through your red line copy. And certainly councilors jump in as needed.
So what I did here is I incorporated changes that we talked about at the last meeting. Some ideas of these. We'll just do what we did last time and start at the beginning and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
So we inserted the word major before major maintenance projects. I would recommend keeping that in for now, but I do think we still need to have a higher level conversation about the maintenance or repair projects. If you open that spreadsheet that I made for you on other town permanent municipal building committee ordinances in Connecticut, most of them do not include repair or maintenance. That's something that the committee will receive. They give that authority to the town department. So I do still think we have to have a conversation about what we want this committee or this document to accomplish.
Can I just ask a question? And I'm playing devil's advocate here. Thinking about John Wallace Building Committee. I see that as renovation
It is
or reconstruction. Would other people see this as major construction or see it as major maintenance? It's really not maintenance. It's a reconstruction and
Yes,
renovation.
correct. That is a renovation contract.
Okay, because I'm just thinking there may be questions, from the public, from others,
Yeah.
and we want to be sure that we're responding correctly.
And I did have this, just
Good.
had facilities, give us a list. Right. Of projects that exceed 25,000 that would be considered maintenance or repair.
Mhm.
So just, he said since January 1st, 2022, 16 projects. Most of them are roof replacements, storage building roof replacement, they did masonry wall replacement at
Mhm.
drainage upgrades, exterior wayfinding signs for town campus, those were $26,000. Those, I mean, these are projects that kind of had to be, gone through and done within a certain amount of time. These are all projects that would have hit over the current $25,000 threshold. But if we're thinking about this commission.
Yeah,
Sure.
I was
Thank
thinking of it too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
About this commission, and this is just, my own personal thoughts on this commission, is we want this commission to be impactful. And I think, in my opinion, it would hinder that impactfulness if they were to get bogged down with all of these other kind of routine projects.
Yeah.
We have worked, we're very lucky as a town to have a robust facilities department. This is their job. There are other things in progress right now, all under this as well. For
Mhm.
instance, the senior center window project, the canopies that you see being
Mhm.
installed on this building in front of Human Services and Parks and Rec. These are all projects that would have under this ordinance. Now that we're rereading it, had to go to this building committee, and it probably would have impacted the efficiency of this project.
Not to mention that they're not major. I mean, they're
Correct.
accessory.
Right.
They're
Correct.
aesthetic in
But
some
if we're
cases.
going based on that definition on page 2, they would have
Yeah.
fallen under that, you know, umbrella. So just so we're aware that there are a good number of these projects that come up throughout the year. Like I said, there were 16 completed between January 1st, 2022, so in less than 24 months, 16 completed, 3 more in progress, and 10 are being planning phase right now. That's a lot. To both ask volunteers to have to be involved in, but also to ask, I think, our staff to have this extra step, this extra
Mhm.
oversight, when there is oversight already in building for these types of.
Now, did facilities have a number that they, in their experience through the projects that they do, thought could be a feasible threshold for major construction? Did they have a perspective on that?
So we're talking major maintenance.
Or major
right?
maintenance, excuse me.
So, no, you know what, Joe and I did speak about the town that he came from, and I don't remember what the question was.
Okay.
So I'd have to go back and ask
Sure.
him, but I will just say that I have towns that I either volunteer in or have worked in. And if you were to open those attachments that I sent you, I think what was like 10 or so other towns in Connecticut that don't list repairs and maintenance. So I wouldn't think that it was widespread in the state of Connecticut to have. So just something, like I said, probably not for tonight, for the next meeting, we should probably delve into that as its own conversation and really talk about what the intent is behind the committee and behind stuff.
A question regarding some of the towns on the spreadsheet that you provided. Did any of them have a threshold? Like we have right now, it's 25,000 for major maintenance. Did you see a dollar amount in any of these?
I'm gonna pull it up, I'm sorry, to pull it up already. I believe that there was one that had a threshold. But it was, and then I have a call into them, I wanna say it was New Fairfield off the top of my head. Their threshold is the threshold for a referendum,
Mhm.
but they do not have a charter. So there is no charter, so I don't know what that threshold is. And I did call and I left a voicemail last week and just said, can you let me know what the threshold is? But if it's a threshold for referendum, I'm going to assume it's significantly higher than $25.
Right. I'm just wondering because this having or not having a dollar amount could be problematic, and also having this dollar amount could be problematic if, we find that routine maintenance, depending upon what it is, could cost significantly more than that, but it's still routine.
Yeah.
It meets all the other part of the definition of routine maintenance.
And, something I'm keeping in mind too, and we'll talk about this more at a later meeting, but we're always going to have a cliff, right? We can set a number or a threshold that's, tied to our referendum threshold, and we'll always have the number that will come within 0.999 of that number. And at that point, I mean, is that project, though it is just shy of that arbitrary threshold, is it still considered major? It is. So, I mean, how we kind of adjudicate that is difficult, but I think because of that tension, I think it would be prudent to look at maybe like a bounds less than a single number, so that we can kind of see all projects within this, not threshold, but within this kind of apparatus of projects that meet this kind of area, we can understand as major construction or major maintenance or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So that it's not so specific, because I mean, at that point, then folks will play with numbers, and we want to disincentivize that, I think.
To make it a little more wonky, I know we're jumping to number 8, major maintenance. 25,000 or such other amount as may be established from time to time by the town manager.
Yes.
So that kind of makes it more confusing.
Absolutely.
Or,
I'm not putting it in.
yeah,
Right.
right. That's
Yeah.
And then, according to what? Well, the town manager, and that's just with the approval of the town council. Well, it's, we know we may not agree on amounts and whatever, or the manager may say one thing and it's another depending upon what it is. And so it's a discussion that's not just the amount, but also that other amount. I'm not in favor or against the town manager being able to do whatever, but it does make it a little more, as I said before, wonky, for lack of a better word.
And, there is somewhat of a definition of routine maintenance within major maintenance, but I'm wondering if maybe we can make that a little more robust. So it's very clearly defined apart from
Yeah,
major maintenance.
correct. Yeah. Would we leave it in if what we did is we also defined what is routine maintenance, right?
Well, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I said the wrong thing, but yeah, that's what I'm thinking. We've got routine maintenance as, and it kind of gives a few
Yeah,
examples, but something that's a little stronger definition so that when somebody looks at this, it's clearer that it's routine, it's not major maintenance.
that's my advice, that we don't get into a system where we are having to every single project say, well, let's review and let's go to council and what
Right.
does this know? And what
Yeah.
as a staff member, this document is most helpful to us as staff, because it's very clear. And we know in advance, this project meets that threshold, we're going to have to get the MVC involved or not.
Well, I think it also would be a huge help for the permanent building commission too, because
Yes.
then they don't have to second guess.
Absolutely,
Correct.
absolutely.
And makes things more efficient
That's
in
right.
both cases.
Exactly.
Have a standing weekly meeting, and that's what volunteers to do.
Yeah.
And like we said, and you just brought this up, Counselor Nagel, but we spoke about this last time, the council should not have the agency to determine what does or does not. This ordinance is what determines what does or
Correct.
does not. They
Mhm.
exercise zero agency over it beyond that. That's the goal.
I know I've kept on saying, we are not here to decide what to do or what not to do. Give us something concrete or two alternatives maybe that are definite and with background from town staff, then maybe we can make the decision as opposed to just generally, well, here it is, what do you think?
Absolutely.
What do I know about me? I know something
Well, yeah,
about me.
you
That's
could
what
get
I
9
know.
different opinions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone's
We
an
don't want
expert.
opinion,
Yeah.
we want fact.
Yeah,
So I would say for the sake of how the document is now, for the sake of what we're expecting now, we keep in the addition of major maintenance. So
Mhm.
that we continue using that jargon of major, it goes back and forth with the document we spoke last time
Mhm.
about, let's keep it consistent. The second change, is that in your, I tried to, layman's term it down to standard 2 or standard 4 a building commission, but it's up to you guys if that works for you.
Yeah, we can get rid of
Just
in.
And, yeah,
no, well, definitely, yeah, we had that conversation.
That looks fine to me.
Yeah.
As the standard two, or
Shall we visit with
can you
such general
just have
powers?
standard two? It's
As
I
standard.
think
little
just
grammar
standard
there.
two.
Yeah,
I think just standard 2.
Yeah, all right,
As standard 2. Is there something,
that's an iffy
sure, it might be.
detail.
Is there something we should reference, like general powers as standard 2, et cetera, as outlined in Connecticut General Statute governing local building process or whatever, is that something that we should include in this? I know that was a discussion last time too, but
I mean, we could go back and insert other things.
if there's no need, there's no need, but
It's
okay,
a kind of a given.
yeah, great.
Why would we not? Well.
well, we could also, what we're doing is we're laying out what those standards are.
Yeah.
So maybe just add something that says,
Hmm.
basically see below,
Yeah.
see the following. Some sentence.
It looks really good in this document.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, again, number 2, adding in major construction, so just keep it the same every time we're thinking. Same again, number 5, major construction. Number 6, to provide interim status reports, we agreed to that last
Mhm.
time. Codifying it in here, and then we remove that redundant duplicated sentence at the end of that.
Mhm.
Again, number 1, adding in major before construction, and then, definition number 2, major construction and demolition shall mean excavation, filling and grading, and building a project site, and I added in build new, build as new, building renovations or additions, just so we continue to clarify what that construction really looks like.
Mhm.
Page 2. Again, we just keep number 8 highlighted so we can have a further conversation about that. And then I did insert a number 9, major changes, because we do reference major changes further on in the document, but we don't codify them in definitions, so they're in there. And then I kind of pulled language from another town and doctored it a little. But major changes shall mean revisions that arise during construction to the scope or size of the building project, which will affect the function or size of the town facility or building. We can wordsmith that.
Mhm.
Number 12, adding in major before construction again. The composition of members. So after we met, I again went through the other town example and kind of really, I took a better look at what they do as far as composition of members. There was one town that I liked because they allowed one additional member from the user group. And in that ordinance, the user group is the body that will be inhabiting the building. So the user group for a school project is a school member. The user group for a library project is someone who represents the library as a user group. So what I did is I took out clause 6 that specifically references the library, and I took out language in clause 4 that specifically references the library, and I added in to number 4 with the exception of an applicable user group member as described below. And then I defined what that user group member is as one additional elector may be appointed by the town council of a user group for each public building project on which the public, and I take up the asset, on which the Public Building Commission acts for the duration of the project. The user group representative shall not be an ex officio member as described below, so they shall not be the chair of the Board of Education, for instance, and that's, as we define below. But they shall vote only on matters pertaining to the project for which he or she is serving on the commission. So we can finesse this language a little more. Obviously, I'm just throwing it out there as a suggestion because in my mind, this kind of served the questions that we had at the last meeting as to, we want agency members basically from whatever group that is involved in the project to feel that they have representation on the permanent building committee, but specific to that project.
Mhm.
And also, I think the conversation we had the last time had us defining a lot of things, right? When it comes to the fire commission, it's this, and when it comes to the board of ed, it shouldn't be someone who's elected, but it should be this. I thought we could use this idea of a user group member to encompass any additional member. That being said, I put it in as one additional member, but you could certainly opt to give them 2 additional members if that made more sense. And we can kind of finesse what that means. I know that there is another clause in this composition section that says it cannot be anyone who's currently elected or appointed to another board, committee, or commission. So that would preclude anyone from the Board of Education serving. So that's certainly something we can have a higher level discussion on as to whether or not we would say that the user group member could be someone already who is appointed to But that's, you know, that's a conversation I didn't want to make
Yeah.
assumptions so much, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we could do here. And then let's have a conversation about what we would be comfortable with.
Okay. I know what you're saying. It sounds good, but I know that extensive time that's putting in idle was done concerning the library, which I stated last time, and
Yeah.
I've stated many times before, that it's a unique situation with the library. That the town does not own the land, does not own the library, that it's a free library and it does have its own separate board that has a connection with the town. So they own the property, and have been very vehement about having more representation since they're unique and they own the property, whereas, unless I'm mistaken, no other venue, user,
Yeah.
department
No.
physically owns
Right.
the buildings, the town does. And I know a lot of work was done by others, not me, I'm not taking the credit, to make that unique. I don't want to call it I guess it's an exception, but it's a vital one because of that unique. They own the property. They will work with the town. Obviously, the town has a connection with the board, with liaisons in terms of what is done, and has some input, and 2 liaisons to the library board that are sitting here, that it sets it apart from all the others. And I know a lot of things were, to make it shorter, a lot of discussion, whatever was done between the board, between the library, between previous town managers, I think even in council meetings, that makes this an exception. And this was written, not that I necessarily am wedded to the way it's written there, the intent I am, that finally things were resolved that made the board happy, and at least those that were writing this at that time happy, that indeed there is a valid reason for this should be different than others. So
And
yeah, stir the
also,
pot, but not really.
No.
I mean, I can understand, and I believe Councilor Rada can understand as well, in a lesser degree, that they have a unique situation here and an investment that even goes earlier than the present form of government, and they don't want to let that go. And I understand why they shouldn't. So this makes things a little wonky unless we leave the exception in here for them. I don't believe I have a problem with what you said about users having some.
Certainly, I mean, I did strike out section 6, but we can put that back, you know, put that back and keep it as part of number 5, right? In the case of the library user group, membership shall be as follows, and keep that language in.
Certainly, I don't
Because
remember
that-
it's part
that
of number
provides-
5 or number 6, but it's one vehemently that I don't want that to be taken out, because it's going to lead to a whole other complicated conversation. And actually, all the parties that most of them reneging on what was agreed to go forth.
Deputy Mayor?
well, it also had stated that the library would have 2 voting members, and
That's my point.
now what we're doing, if we're speaking more generally, we're stating that each will have 1 voting member.
Well,
So-
and again, this is just language I
It's-
told,
yeah,
and
we're
you
having a
guys can
discussion.
decide that you would like it to be 2. Personally, I think 2 is probably a really good idea, because in my personal opinion, an odd number committee or commission always works better than an even number, because you're less likely to get into a tie situation.
We had that discussion too, many
Mhm.
times.
Then also it allows, if you wanted to have 1 from each political party, or at least to say something like 2 members not of the same political party, so you make sure you have a little bit more well-rounded representation of it.
Well, it also allows for one of those members to be absent, and you would still have representation.
Yeah.
I think to the very good points that I think were just made, yeah, I am uncomfortable with decodifying the library's special relationship that they have with the town as evidenced through this ordinance. I'm uncomfortable with that, and and I certainly wouldn't want their representation under any new function here to diminish from 2 members to 1 member. So I think for a couple things, I like the language around user group. I think it's tight. I think it speaks to the intention of having a stakeholder group there. It's because they are the end user of that project. It's not just by virtue of whatever, but it's because they have a vested interest in its benefit. And I appreciate that verbiage. That being the case, I think we can assume, unless they are a staff member, which we talked about last time, can get into very difficult, residency and other things like that. But unless they are a staff member, we can assume that individual that will be appointed on behalf of that user group will have a partisan attachment of some kind. And so assuming that, I think it's more responsible to have 2 members rather than 1 to maintain an even partisan split on that committee, because, again, there will already be the explicitly partisan appointments, but we don't want to run the risk of that getting into, that member it has a vested interest in this project because they have this partisan affiliation or they have this one. But we want to externalize all of that to the degree that we possibly can. And I think 2 voices keeping that partisan split even will in some ways force those 2 voices to act as a singular representative of that user group, because there's really no benefit in, I'm going to lobby this way or I'm going to lobby that way for my own partisan preference. That we should externalize that. So I think having 2 members rather than 1, recodifying the library's special relationship, and, and also, I guess, just clarify between 5 and 6, or even if it's just in 1, that doesn't mean the library gets 4 now, it means that they get 2.
Well, that's the other point. If you suddenly up the others, then the agreement with the library is having more representation, and rightly so. Some of them may come and say, well, now we're on the same footing as everyone else. And we have a special, as I said earlier, owning of the land and not being probably the wrong word, a tenant of a town building, that they don't have any more impact than anyone else on their particular project. Obviously, the library's board is not going to be on this building committee for every building that's renovated in town or whatever. But I think that's important to include. And also, just to throw one more thing in, I've noticed in the other town ordinances, whatever, that there was a limit to the number of people on that. I believe it ranged between 5 and 7 and never got bigger than that, which I don't have a problem with ex officio more people or other people being there and not having votes than having more voting members that aren't specifically involved in the trades or would be on the committee for everything.
Sure. Yeah, I also think that having a limit on ex officio is important, because even if they don't have voting representation, to your good point, Councillor Nagel, if you crowd a room full of a bunch of voices that happen to, have the same perspective as those user group representatives, you've really kind of defeat the whole purpose. So I think maybe limiting that at 2, the way that it is for these other codified stakeholder groups, the fire chief and the chairperson of the board, et cetera, stuff like that. I think that could be helpful. As it relates to the library, I can appreciate what you said, Councillor Nagel. At the same time, I think it's also important to keep in mind that in a situation where other stakeholder groups, or in this case, user groups, get 2 voting members, that doesn't deprive the library of any voice or vote that they currently have under the Permanent Municipal Building Commission ordinance as it exists. It just raises other stakeholder groups, user groups, as we've had, discussions in council about this. It raises their ability to express voice and vote as well. But it doesn't then deprive the library of any representation. And so while I can appreciate that there's a special relationship and that it should be particularly codified here, I don't think that it would be particularly fair to look at other user groups and in effect deprive them now of their right to vote and voice relative to the library, even given that special relationship. I think it's helpful to have these organizations with the equal amount of voice and vote in the processes that pertain to their particular interest and user group.
I'd be repeating exactly what I said before, that indeed the uniqueness of the library and their being able to vote is because they own the property. They should have a voting control over things. And when you make everyone else the same, it seems unfair because someone in a group may be very, I don't want to mention a particular group because then we get into that and I don't want to. They may have a special interest, but may not have the knowledge about the physical building of that in terms of something they want and not want. And they, in their heart of hearts, may say, this is good just for me or for whatever, but it may be detrimental to the building or the renovation because the money needs to come from somewhere. And once we start to get into the weeds of the building committees that we have now with lots of people on them, where there are special interests, and indeed, be they political or not, that have led to certain things being done and not done because of physical constraints or whatever, that after they're done, people say, well, why wasn't this done? Or look, this was done. Why was that done? Or this doesn't meet up to what we wanted in the first place. And you have that whole conversation. And I've heard conversations, and we all have, about people about things that have been done in the past and then coming back saying that never should have been done. And then you get in the weeds of, well, why did this happen and that not happen? And the finger pointing and as opposed to the efficiency of getting something accomplished without introducing voices that may be not helpful or goodwill or not, entering into it and complicating the issues of the physical ability to construct something and or to renovate it in an efficient way, and having a vote that may change what may be what is in the physical best interests, and I mean general, of a renovation or a building. In other words, being on a committee and saying, oh, I'm on this thing or that thing, and I have no knowledge about a building and how it's built, but I'm going to be here and then I'm going to be able to say, yes, this is what should be done. And if it's a closed vote, that can change things. It's not to the benefit of the town. I know when I first started doing this kind of stuff, not that I'm an expert now, I'm going, oh, okay, I guess this is all right, what they're saying. And then learning down the pike that, well, God, maybe I shouldn't have voted that way. And it leads to the best interests of people may not, in their own particular case, whatever, if they don't have the knowledge, may not be in the final best interest of the product or the renovation. I feel like I'm talking in circles.
No,
now.
I don't think you are. And if I could, I'll just, to your points, and we have talked a lot about how important it is to have this process guided by professionals and by experts. And while it's important and useful to have stakeholders at the table and to, in our perspective, have a voice and a vote in that process, that they should not dominate that process, because something that this ordinance got very right is all of the context and background that you just laid out of the real detriment that comes with the way we do things now, which is highly stakeholder driven, and does potentially lead to inflated projects or inflated budgets or lack of professional expertise internalized in those processes at the worst end, and other things even in the best of circumstances. So I think that's all very, very important. Zooming out though, and I'm trying to keep cognizant of that, adding 2 additional stakeholder members to this committee wouldn't create that kind of dominance for that stakeholder group. They would have 2 additional voices, 2 new voices in the case of folks that are not the library, 2 new voices in that stakeholder position. They would still be, for lack of a better word, and put it quite crudely, but they would be outnumbered by those 3 professional experts appointed by the town manager or recommended by the town manager, appointed by the council. And there would still be 2 other members there in addition to them that, would have their own perspective, and ideally, given the way this is written, have expertise in the building trades or other things relevant to a project. So that all being the case, I think that just having 2 additional members with voice and vote does not lead to the kind of dominance or inflation or poor outcomes that we may have seen so far. All it does is provide voice and vote to stakeholder groups that don't currently have it. And that, just to add.
Well, in addition, it just occurred to me that we know how difficult it has been, and we've reduced sizes of different committees because you can't get a quorum.
Yeah.
Well, if you have the wrong people who can't be there at the various times, those additional people that may not have the expertise that others have may very well be able to flip the vote on something very important.
So this sounds to me like a bigger conversation. We do unfortunately turn into pumpkins in about 45 minutes of conversation and set up. Fortunately, this is just the way the meeting schedule is worked out today. There's a lot going on. But I'm hearing 2 things. I'm hearing perhaps all user groups should be entitled to 2 members on a commission or committee that's overseeing the building project in that space. And I think I'm hearing also maybe that's what we've done in the past, but maybe that's not been the most effective and potentially could lead to negative outcomes that we don't want to see in the future, except that we do have to be respectful of the public-private partnership that we have with the library. So that would be an item unto itself. And I think that this is a fundamental conversation that we need to have along the lines of the same conversation with the major repairs, those kind of higher level, what do we want this document to accomplish? What do we want this committee to accomplish? What I sent to you from the 9 other towns in Connecticut, the membership composition is all over. Not like I can say the standard is to have 2 user group members, because that's not the standard. You go from Canton, which has 4 permanent members, but allows 7 additional stakeholder members, which is insane.
Wow.
To some other towns I'm looking at. Windsor has 9 members, 4 selected and appointed, and that's it. And same thing with Berlin, they have 7 members, they're council appointed, they are not allowing stakeholder user group members. So there is no standard. We can decide what is the best thing for Newington here specifically to us. And those are 2, I think, conflicting ideologies, right? Either allowing all user groups to have additional membership, or only allowing the library because we have a specific unique public-private partnership, and that to me feels like a bigger fundamental conversation. So if you guys are okay with that, I think the next meeting that you hold should be maybe not looking at the whole document, but looking at these 2 concepts.
And
I haven't
go
had a
ahead.
chance to look at some of the other attachments that you sent, so I'd like to,
Yeah.
and see what the language is, and what, maybe be able to figure out what the idea was behind whatever decision was made,
Yes.
in terms of voting members.
And I have no problem with ex officio. Just to restate that, I have no problem with that.
Speaking to I'm speaking specifically to members that will be allowed.
Yeah.
To vote.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
which was a major reason why this committee was set up in the first place, was to discuss that question. So, yeah,
Yes.
I think that's helpful.
And we are.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple of questions and suggestions, while we're still on this page. We talk about user group, and I went back and we don't have that under our glossary. I would say a definition of user group would be helpful.
Yep.
And when I was reading through number 3, any vacancy in the commission, shall be recommended by the relevant, proposing body and the member appointed by the town council. I have a problem with that for 2 reasons. One, if there's a vacancy by either the Democratic or Republican appointed member, then that person would be proposed by their party. And then any other commissioner would have been recommended and proposed to the town council by the town manager, not the proposing body. So I'm concerned about using that language and staying with, I think we have to maybe add a little bit, but not to make it confusing. But any vacancy in the commission, number one, if it's a, I'm trying to see how we identify it. If it's a commissioner that has been recommended to the council by the town manager, then the town manager should be the one recommending a commissioner, proposing a commissioner to fill that.
Yeah.
That is the intent. So if that is not clear, then.
Well, it's not, because that only that speaks to the commissioners. That speaks to the commissioners of recommended by the town manager. But what about if there is a commissioner, for example, the Republicans put forth, I'm just going to use it, John Donahue, and for some reason John cannot fulfill his role or his charge, then wouldn't it be the Republican Party that would then propose to the council someone to fill that position?
Yeah.
So it doesn't account for those two.
It wasn't clear to me.
It just sounds like any vacancy shall be recommended by the relevant proposing body. Well, number one, none of those initially were recommended by a proposing body. They were recommended either by the town manager or by a counselor from either, probably the majority and the minority leader from either party.
Would it help if we inserted just town manager and the relative parties? I'm just,
Yeah, I
Throwing
was looking, I'm trying to think on the fly language that we can use that doesn't, get really, as you say, wonky
I mean,
and
simplistically, somehow it would be if you included town manager appointed.
because there are those
Bodies appointed.
differences in appointments.
Can I ask what was the issue with appointing authority? Was that was
So-
that they? or-
The appointing authority is the council.
Yeah.
Right? The
Mhm.
council is, so it can't be filled.
Vacancy in the shall
What
be-
we said was we wanted it to be consistent with the language in number 1, which says that they are recommended by each major party and subject to approval by the council. So that the intent was to make this the same, that they would not be filled by the relevant appointing authority, because we wanted to indicate that they still had to be recommended by these other bodies.
So that go ahead.
I was just going to suggest maybe recommending authority or something. I mean, that gets kind of redundant. Shall be recommended by the recommending.
And
authority.
I was thinking the same thing, but I'm thinking shall be proposed by the relevant recommending authority.
Or
And then it goes to the town council again for approval.
Shall be recommended by the town manager or major party as applicable, because we'll know what the vacancy is for,
Mm-hmm.
Well, we will.
and appointed by the town.
Only thing is, I mean, this brings us back to the question around additional membership, which we can revisit, but obviously, if there was an additional stakeholder group that has a recommending authority, they wouldn't be included there.
Correct.
So-
This is
Hmm.
specific to the permanent membership, full membership of, we're still on there. We don't get into the applicable user groups until section 4, which says all of these things these things are here, 1 through 3 plus half of 4 are here. And the exceptions that we're making to this are the user groups.
Then would it be too much additional language for number 3 to say, as pertinent to the, what are we calling it, the standing, or the permanent commission membership?
Yeah,
So that it's very clear that those are the folks that we're talking about.
Yep.
Not anyone that's project adjacent.
Only thing is, I mean, then we would have to delineate how a user group representative, if that language is kept in, how they then fill vacancies when they arise. So
Yes.
we just duplicate that language. If,
Correct.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but for my mind, I almost think it's more worthwhile just to say it once and have it apply more broadly. But if you don't think it's the end of the world to repeat
it's
it,
not the end of the world. And
Okay.
I think that was our intent, we were trying to apply it broadly, but if we're already having questions internally, then let's codify it and make it clear and add a little bit,
Sure.
a few more words just to make sure that we don't run into this question in the future.
So then maybe number 3, where we're talking about vacancies, could come farther down. After we've really delineated all aspects of the membership,
Yeah.
of permanent building committee, of any
Yeah, that's true. Instead we can-
electors from a
yeah.
stakeholder group, and then we talk about vacancies. That way, we can
Yeah.
pull it all into one space, into one paragraph.
I think that's a good idea.
That's a really good solution.
Just one other thing, a very tiny thing on that
No, you
section
can't.
3, I'm sorry,
No.
forbid. On section 3, and I was just noting this, that just in terms of gendered language, there's no consistency there. Sometimes it's his, sometimes it's hers, his/hers, sometimes it's theirs.
Overall, because we did bring this up when we did the rules of procedure,
We
we
did.
changed all he, she to they, them.
Mhm.
Just they, them, there, just to keep it non-gender. You guys are okay with that? That way we're just referencing person, not any specific.
I'm happy with
Okay.
that.
Did you have other edits in that
Um,
section, Deputy Mayor?
No, for now, no, I think I'm just under ex officio membership, it's more formatting than anything else on number 5. Should have the ability to recommend advisory ex officio, get rid of the comma, non-voting member or members who, comma, are approved, would be approved and appointed by the town council.
And again, I, for that section, maybe if this is something we'll revisit and continue to discuss, but in terms of the language there for proposing body, maybe that should mirror user group of some kind. Or perhaps it's not the same, but, we'd have to discuss that. And then just in terms of a limitation on that membership, most other user groups, I like that term, so I'm going to continue to use it, listed here have a 2-person, ex officio team. So I
Well,
would suggest 2 as well.
And maybe that's how we update 5, because it is a little, it's, the more I read it, Kim, I agree. Which is apparently my favorite word.
Mine too.
So if we could change 5 to say something like, any other user group committee chairperson shall only serve as an ex officio membership. and kind of change it around. I'm thinking just other user groups, most likely there will not be two ex officio members because it was already, they'll already be encompassed by the town manager or the board of ed,
Mhm.
superintendent.
Mhm.
So if I'm just thinking like, if we had a pool.
Why would we have a pool?
Commission as a chairperson, but the highest up on that will still be the town manager, which is already codified. One is an ex officio member.
Hmm.
So if we keep it to any other user group chairperson, you know, it will only be allowed to serve as ex officio.
And then I think, you know, it would be prudent of us to define that as clearly as possible as what is any other user group. You
Yeah.
know, because if it's suddenly a, you know, I don't know, I think, for example, a community organization that's working to support a project and they have a chairperson or something like that, they may look at that language and say, well, I have the right to serve in an ex officio capacity on the committee, you know, that has cognizance over this project. Why aren't I, you know, a part of the process? And, you know, it should be delineated, I think, a little bit more clearly.
To go back to something that you mentioned, Matt, we have proposing body and user group. Are we using that interchangeably? And, or is there a specific difference between the two? If not, then I'll go back to what we talked about last week, which was, let's be consistent with.
Yeah, continuity.
And
Yeah.
I do not see those as interchangeable. To
Okay.
me, a proposing body is whoever is bringing you a project forward, and a user group is whoever is going to be actively in the project. They may be the same, but they may not be the same.
Okay. Okay, we
That's
do
kind
have,
of that if we were to have a community stakeholder.
Which for my part, I think would be great, but I think it needs to be clarified here. I think
Yeah.
you've got to choose one and maybe that's just my own perspective, but I think it creates uncertainty when that user group and the proposing body are not the same entity. And this is so sensitive, and I don't think you want there to be any question as to who has a voting privilege on behalf of that user group or whatever it might be, and then who serves in an ex officio capacity. I think that we want that to be as clear as it possibly can be.
I will just say that if you go and look at the examples that I provided from other towns, they are significantly shorter and significantly less nuanced.
Yeah.
Than our
This is
documents.
very specific.
Conversations that we're having.
Mhm.
So that may be something to consider for the next meeting, is are we putting so much into this that it becomes inefficient? And I don't know that we are, but just kind of considering if,
Mhm.
do we get so specific? And I agree with you, if we're going to get midline specific, we probably need to get so specific so that we're not. Or do we kind of pare back and say, you know what, we just made this more cumbersome than it needed to be? So I definitely suggest looking at those examples that we sent over, just to see if maybe we don't have to be so specific.
I think that's very important. I think in terms of the composition, that specificity may be
Yeah.
warranted. I go into the building project procedures section and it's like, you know, who delivers the paperclip that goes on the
Yeah.
packet that's supposed to be. It's very,
Yeah.
very, very specific.
Yeah.
And much of it is, I think, really useful to have in there. And it's certainly for transparency's sake, it should be spelled out as clearly as possible. But I think there is a lot of extra
Yeah.
in there that needn't be, I mean, if we just reference a point in the charter or reference a point in the rules and procedures of the council or something, I think you can get rid of major lines of this.
Yeah. So I'll use an example from the town that I came from. While I was there, we created an ordinance for the ethics commission. And the ordinance itself is fairly slim. But it references that the Ethics Commission is expected to annually update a rules and procedure document. And so a lot of these things would be in their governing document versus the board. It came down to allowing the commission to say, we work best fine. And this is the procedure that we will follow, and they had to ratify that.
Hello?
Hi.
School meeting?
It is not.
It is, I
When is the
think that's up in
It's
person.
starting at 6 p.m. and it is in the Parks and Rec. So, we'll take it on home.
Thank you.
meeting is this?
This is,
Okay, smoke what you got.
Right.
I'm, I'm thinking that sometimes when there's too much detail, that hogties you.
Hmm.
I mean, you are bound to such specific work that nothing gets done, or that then you have to, let's go back and we have to look at this and read. We're just talking about when it's so specific that it creates even more problems, because then every time something comes up, there's such a specificity that, wait a minute, this isn't, now we have to go back and we have to revise this yet again, or how does this fit in? There's no, it's not that it's one size fits all, but there is no flexibility.
Yeah.
User and propose are two different things,
Right.
which is your point earlier.
yeah. So again, that's more of a fundamental conversation, right? It's not specific to this document, it's kind of specific to what do we want any of, whatever the final version of the ordinance to accomplish. Do we want it to just be a very general, which is generally what charges for committees are, right? It's, hey, there will be a committee, it will consist of these members, it will be expected to accomplish that. And then you say in the charge or in the ordinance for the committee, we expect that this committee will set rules of procedure and that they will be reviewed annually, biannually, whatever. So
And there is no document that's rules and procedures.
For that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Specifically for this.
but by not codifying them into ordinance, you allow them to be more of a living document versus codifying something into ordinance takes a review process that's change, right? It takes a public hearing and public notice, 15 days before you can make a change. So it's just kind of deciding on a fundamental level what needs to be in the ordinance that makes it a little more rigid and more specific versus what can be removed from the ordinance, but given to the committee as recommendations for their government.
For example, I mean, you know, you look at letters A through, I mean, I don't want to get specific, but a large portion of the front part of the procedural section of the ordinance is in our charter as it relates to the referendum process. It just rewrites it here in slightly different words, which I have some discomfort with, given that there is supposed to be one set of words that govern that process. So yeah, I think that there's are many opportunities, as you said, to reference back to existing places where these processes are laid out, and beyond that, to give some deference to the committee to, you know, decide how it day-to-day functions, you know, in other ways. You know, so I think there's areas where transparency needs to be clear. Well, certainly transparency needs to be everywhere, but areas where it needs to be clearly codified, and others where it's just unnecessary. We have it codified in other areas, so.
Well, it will give you extra work. A couple of examples of rules and procedures so that we can take a look at the difference between an ordinance and then the rules and procedures that accompany that.
Yeah.
That ordained
I
body.
researched all these terms. I know people that almost all of them.
Because I think that would be helpful if that's something that we decide we would like to go with and recommend. It would also be helpful if that's approved for the building commission to have some type of a template or models to look at.
Great. We want to continue to move through onto page
Yeah.
4. Unless counselors have other comments on page 3?
Mm-mm.
Okay, on to page 4.
Project initiation again, I'm just gonna assume all the places that I've added major before construction that were just.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We removed the word only in that section, any proposing body shall initiate consideration of such need by presenting the state to the council as sufficient enough. The council determines that any such need or major construction or alteration exists. And then we added, and that such project falls under the purview of the commission as described in the duties. The council shall by majority vote notify the permanent building commission in accordance with the commission. So we added that such projects falls under because we knew that we wanted to create that there may be projects that don't fall under. So we're okay with that. Yeah. Again,
Just one thing, I'm sorry. One thing was just with regards to what the commission is called. In some areas, it's called the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. Some areas it's called the Permanent Building Commission. Some areas this, that, and the other thing. So
and if you're
we should
okay
pick one.
with that, I'm happy to in the front. Where it says notice of permanent municipal building commission, and then add language that says.
PM. Yeah, perfect.
Mhm.
Mhm.
As I was reading it, and I picked up on that in my brain as I was reading too, like, oh. The commission, C in commissions up is capitalized, not the permanent building, and also it's not this full name, so I'll go through for consistency on that.
Thank you. Great. Any comments on A?
Mm-mm.
Okay, on B.
On B, we're change requesting agency to proposing body to keep it consistent, because that's what we define in the commissions. C, selection of architectural or engineering firm. If the town council, and we added by majority vote appropriates funding, or following the approval of a building project addendum, the town council shall authorize the commission to recommend the selection of engineers, etc. So it did say if the town council determines that the proposed building project is financially feasible, but that was kind of wonky language
Mhm.
for what the actual intent is. It's if you appropriate money, or if the public vote, the electors come out and vote and say, yes, you can spend the money. So that's just codifying that. We further down in that section, if the commission is unable to report the account to the town council, the name of another architectural and/or engineering firm that can do the work. The initial language says within 15 days, but further on, they're allowed 30 days for finding another replacement. So we changed both instances to say within 15, but no later than 30 days, just to give a little bit of flexibility and consistency.
Mhm.
To page 5. Any comments on page 4?
Okay, 2 quick changes here, number 5, competitive bids. It said on acceptance of a bid by the town council is the old language. We just added in majority vote just to keep it consistent with the charter. And then again, further down in the project management, if the commission has an issue with the project manager, they have 15 days to find a new candidate, and up to 30, just keeping it consistent.
Mhm.
Got nothing is right on the next page. That's it, that gets us to the end of the document. We have just our kind of first,
Okay.
our first one. I will
Great.
go through and I will accept change to the things that we've done.
Okay.
And then maybe, like I said, if we could go to the next meeting to really just discussing those 2 kind of bigger high level, what is repair or maintenance? what is the membership we want to see? And then I'll take a look through at the different ways that we can interchange user group and proposing body and see if there's anything I see.
Great.
That would, you know, kind of muddy the water. from those two.
Great, great.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for all your work.
Good.
Any other, oh, pardon me,
Good.
any other comments?
No, I can just set another date.
Yeah,
So we're gonna skip past number 6 on our agenda. And after number 7, we'll discuss the other date, but we'll open it up to public participation again. Anybody online or in the room that would like to speak?
we have
Yes, you're
no.
welcome.
public- yeah.
This is just such thrilling work. You
We're the
know,
popular
I'm
community.
disappointed that we don't have.
I know.
Where are these Zoom people?
This is the nerd committee. I
Yeah.
think. Proud of it.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Yep.
What would be
That's right. That's right. Well, good. Then we will move to discuss then a new date. Do folks want to take out their handy dandy schedules? I know we met 2 weeks ago from this week. Do we want to meet another 2 weeks out?
30th?
The 30th? Let's take a look. Anything?
The
ringing a
30th
bell?
is a Tuesday,
That's correct.
so we won't have a council meeting that night.
No council meeting. Conservation Commission is meeting tonight.
Does that work for you, Counselor Nagel?
I think so at the moment.
Okay. And Lauren, what does that look like for you? Okay.
At 5?
At 5 p.m.?
5 is great.
Five will work for me.
So we'll tentatively set for July 30th at 5 p.m. council chambers, and then if need be, we will change as needed, but we'll go with that.
Sounds good.
Let me just check the meeting room.
Sure,
Make sure we are-
sure.
Okay.
Just charge the mic for next.
That's why it sounds familiar. So the registrar actually are doing work in here that night, but I can put us in a different, put us in roll and egg, so we can put it.
All right,
Great,
That's
okay,
fine.
wonderful. 201A then, for any other nerds that want to join us in the room.
If anyone's listening.
Yeah, that's right. Great. Well, wonderful. I think this was a productive discussion. Thank you, Lauren, again for all of your help and your work. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
All opposed?
knew you wanted to do that.
I knew